get a couple more seconds, let everybody get set for a minute. But today we're going to talk about a lot going on with AWS, right? And a whole bunch of data that we can get out of CloudTrail, and what can we do with that data, and start trying to understand a little bit more of how we can enhance ourselves without having to fumble through that data all the time. And really what you'll learn about today is how to get CloudTrail in a queryable manner, but how do we do it with our product, essentially. And I'm kind of curious in a lot of ways with the people that have come to this is how you're dealing with CloudTrail today, right? How much telemetry are you actually getting out of that? All the different ARNs that you're dealing with, all the different identity access, the keys that you're sending back and forth, the sessions that are going back and forth. How are you logging all of that today? How are you making sense of that? How are you correlating that and understanding that even better? And we're going to give you a little bit of knowledge on taking a look at consumable sessions, and then also trying to correlate that with network data and how do we kind of look around, like with different data sources that are out there, EDR technology, networking technology and such, and go from there. But web console internals, what do we really look at? So we have temporary API credentials that we'll pull for people. A lot of times we'll get different calls that are happening on behalf of people. Maybe we'll do like cross-account roles for data S3 type things. Maybe we'll get things with EC2, all kinds of different credentials that are happening during the day. But then how do we find those API keys? How do we understand what that investigative flow of what happened inside of AWS when we try to look at it from an investigative manner? And if we look at Athena, Athena is typically what people will actually use nowadays that are trying to understand CloudTrail a little bit more. It's one of the easier ways to do it. But the only thing is it's hard to view. I like to think of it like a terminal session and such. And logs are saved in a JSON format. They get stuffed into S3. And then it really allows you, and interestingly enough, to query S3 buckets. You can kind of look at things inside of there, which is, I'm used to doing an API call to different things, or maybe doing an AWS command line. And it's not very intuitive, but hey, we like nerding out on things, right? Looking at that. And it can be easily configured with CloudTrail. So CloudTrail is really easy to configure, really easy to get the data out. And then what happens after that? You either have things like getting session tokens, we do cross-account roles, people have data going back and forth, and then we're actually doing different things with those assumed roles between companies, interdepartmental things, different companies and such. And other examples are something like temporary credentials that we get with permanent credentials and such. And they all generate temporary credentials in the end. All of them, right? But ARNs aren't unique, right? So ARNs are definitely something. Access keys actually are unique, right? So we actually get those, we generate them, and then we can track them throughout the different areas that we go. And then multiple people, services, identity, all different kinds of things, and AWS can understand that. But how do we follow the access keys? Like, we're investigating things and trying to see where things have gone. We understand that a get session token happens, maybe an assumed role, maybe another assumed role with temporary creds happen, different accounts, account A, account B, and such. But web sessions are very different. Usernames, passwords, those types of things. And then the AWS API calls that are happening, you got an access key and a secret key at that point. But investigating, it's still going to be tough, right? Different switch roles and renewing roles. Still looking at things like, got an event time that's in there, console logins, get an identity. But then think about trying to correlate this between this and network activity that's happening. Maybe inside your network, maybe correlating it with AD, who the user is, what other kind of entities are out there, where did they go to next, which systems did they access it from, how do we integrate Okta logs at the same time with this at the same shot? And then what are the challenges with that? What are some challenges that you guys have run into today, typically with CloudTrail? Anybody? No? Awfully quiet. Did you guys just eat lunch? Come on. But every single API call is logged in the sense, right? So you got a whole ton of data that's coming through this. And if you ever try to put it in an S3 bucket, you realize it's going to, orders of magnitude, it's going to get big. Very, very big. All right? Some of the other ones I've seen, like CrowdStrike, their API data, there's a ton of data in there, right? So tenfold, these two are usually the highest end data sources that we see and the ones that we get most of the data out of. And then the logging that happens out of this is it's not entirely comprehensive, it's not intuitive, it doesn't really allow you. I think about Windows event logs when I look at this. It's like, what is Microsoft really trying to tell me about this? It adds more questions than answers in a lot of times. But the whole thing is that how do we stitch it all together? From network to EDR to cloud, multiple cloud environments. I mean, people don't just use AWS. There's companies that use Microsoft Azure because they have a ELA in place. And then maybe they've got AWS resources that are running. Then they've got CrowdStrike running. They've got Okta. They've got all kinds of different things going there. As an investigator, I want to understand what actually happened. Look at all the different log sources, extract as much information I can from the AWS identities, look at EC2, and look at even things like Route 53 or S3 areas, everything that AWS can provide. But this is typically what we're looking at from a forensics view, maybe inside of a spreadsheet, maybe a CSV file, maybe you're doing a tail on something, maybe you're catting it, and those types of things, get the times, date stamps. It's kind of hard to put this in an investigative report, right? Because a lot of people will ask, what am I looking at? And there's not really a point of view in there. So the idea is what we'll do with hunters is that we put this into stitching all the sessions together, and then what we'll end up giving you is a area that you can search, and then also use pivot tables inside of that data when it comes into our system. So think of CloudTrail coming in as a data source in its raw format, getting pushed into Snowflake, and then being able to look at that data in this kind of tabular format in whichever way you want. So how do I filter it, columnize it, put it into pivot tables, do searches on it so I can build detectors, make leads, make things that I can investigate, and stories that I can actually understand better as an investigator. The idea is to really become a SOC workflow or a SOC platform in the end of this. The idea is that really data lakes are kind of the future, if you think about it. A lot of things were on-prem, hardware-based, limited by database, compute, everything just kind of in a box. We didn't have that scalability. So when things like CloudTrail come along, which give us a lot of data, we just do not have the ability to consume it, right? Which is where Hunters comes in, or SaaS platforms come in, and you see this really, really large accelerated momentum that investigators are saying, how do I take in all of this data from all these data sources where I don't have holes in my investigative timelines because things don't exist, or I couldn't take them in, or my events per second was too high, or the renewal this year is too high, which ends up increasing risk for the organization. So, how does the data engine work? Well, once all the data gets ingested in its raw form, we actually unify the schema inside of it so that we can actually index and look at things better, make things very fast and streamlined. And then in those cases, the idea is that we can build detectors customized, or we can build the detectors ourselves, or we build custom detectors as well for customers, and then leverage everything inside of that data set. The biggest thing is speed that's increased typically with this, and that the sky's the limit to whatever the customer wants to bring in. They're not limited. Give them the flexibility to grow to what they need to do to lessen risk. So in automated form, aside from taking in CloudTrail logs, we take in threat intel feeds like from Anomaly or Recorded Future. Other enterprise data, we think about like HRIS systems, other identity type information, so that I know that when somebody does something, it does maybe a privilege escalation or starts to use an ARN in certain ways, that they're supposed to be doing that. Maybe they're a senior cloud engineer, senior cloud architect. That's normal. But marrying accounting, it's probably not the right thing to see her using some principal ARN name and moving things across S3 or exfiltrating data. That's probably a problem. And then we can integrate that and bring it in seamlessly into the detection engine, push it into the analyst view, and give them a very nice picture around what actually happened without them having to do too much investigation, or pivot between consoles where they actually have to go in and actually start taking screenshots, develop a document, submit it, tell everybody what happened, incident command gets involved, and you're trying to give all this information out. You don't want to pivot to multiple things. It takes too long, especially at the rate we're growing with technology, right? I mean, look at this place. This is a big event, but think of Black Hat, RSA, all these other ones. The amount of tech that's coming in is insane. Team Axon down the bottom, you see a little green box down there. It's actually our research group. So the research group you can actually reach out to with an investigation. Maybe you see something around AWS that doesn't look right, and then you can reach out to our investigators that actually will help build that investigative timeline and assist the staff to that. So it's not that you're relying on 24/7 coverage or somebody that's going to give you false positives. They work with you, with your staff that knows your environment better than anybody else. Correlated event stories also happen at the end, so we can push out to different source systems or different workflows. So you can automate with different APIs and such. Push out to ticketing systems, Slack, maybe Teams, and other different areas too as well. So. Hunter's interface from top to bottom, same thing as we just showed. What you're looking at is the ingestion at the very, very top. So we're actually taking a very large amount of data that's reduced into the detections that are happening, and then reduced even further down to something called leads. Now, leads are the product of the detection as we go through logic. What we want is hot leads, though. The way this works is think about a police officer that gets a tip that something's going on down the street. That's what we want. We don't want every little thing that's going on because we just can't keep up. Right now, in my local police department where I'm at home, somebody had a credit card fraud that happened, right? They get a fraudulent charge on a credit card. Call the bank, they go, okay, we'll refund it. Okay, well, you're going to go after the bad guys or what? No. Call the police department, put an investigative report. What happened? Well, somebody actually put a fraudulent charge on my credit card. What do you want us to do about it? Well, can't you go after them? Well, not really. We just handle what happens here. Then you call the FBI hotline, it's like, leave a message after the beep. Is the theft over $10,000? No, right? So, well, once you get all the hot leads going on in here, what's going to happen is a hot story is going to get developed at the bottom, and then you actually get to understand really what's going on. So it gives you a nice layout, and then we can pull in other information like IOC information, network traffic, along with the CloudTrail info, and give you what we call drill downs, where you have all the entity information. So we don't think of people and systems as, we're thinking of them as the same thing. Everybody's an entity in this cyber universe that really happens, right? And why do I have a relationship with this IP address or this email address or this other host that I never talk to? What happened? Something happened. And that's how we can pull this enrichment information out and tell you what's going on. So in the response engine, this is a good example actually. CVEs that come out, a lot of times we'll write different detectors or do IOC sweeps to fill in information. You can provide reports back to the customers when things are involved, such as the F5 big IP here issue. Give you the CVE article. It's not a vulnerability scanner by any means, but what we're doing is that data in that data lake with everything that's going on and pulling into there from all those multiple data sources is to scan across and say what things in my environment are susceptible to that CVE from a log perspective, data flow perspective. Not scanning IP addresses and understanding gives you a lot more capability and a lot more speedy recovery. Now, when accounts get compromised, we look at initial access, recon, different things that happen, lateral movement, data exfil, data exploit, DNS queries and such. And the idea is really to kind of shorten the mean time to know, mean time to respond. And a lot of people are asking me, like, how long does it take you to actually go through a response now? Right? Some will say 4 hours, some will say a couple days, some will say I only get a week to do it because things will move off to cold storage. We always want to have hot data so we can do retrospective analysis as quick as we can to try and shorten the time to response. In that, the data has to be accessible though. Can't roll it off the cloud storage like in Glacier or something like that you're never going to get back to it, or it costs money to get it back and it takes days to get it back. So on the left-hand side over there, you can actually see on the side what we call, those are our leads. You can see where email was affected, somebody got phished, right? And then you can see how it accessed the cloud, identity happened, then it gets to the endpoint, then it got to the network. Those are typically the 5 things that I always would be asking as an investigator of where did it touch and what happened. Somebody clicks on a phishing attempt, what happened? Did the phishing system block everything that's happening? Did it exploit something on it? Did it download a malicious PDF? This is the answers that we're trying to give to the analysts so that they don't have to go find it. So everything in here, we have prepackaged detectors, about 700 today. Always can build custom ones and everything. Not limited by any means. Map it up to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Show you where those detectors actually fall so you can stack up and see where you're actually at. And then understand, how can I get better? What other things can I actually enable from a logging source to actually turn on and then get better coverage in that MITRE ATT&CK framework? MITRE ATT&CK 11 just came out, right? So a lot bigger. MITRE ATT&CK V10 has been out for, I don't know, what, year or so? Maybe a little longer, something like that. But the idea is to clarify your coverage and really kind of understand how you can prove that you're doing the best you can with the log sources that you're bringing in. And that can be a compliance issue, it can be a GRC issue, it can be all kinds of different things that come up. Government mandate, they ask, how are you doing this? Well, show me. Well, here you go. That's how we're doing it. And a lot of times then in that case, you'll get a recommendation, not a finding. Nobody wants a finding because findings usually cost money. But left-hand side, you can actually see a lot of correlation links and the data points that are going on. And really what we're looking at is a graphical entity relationship that's going on. Now, thinking about trying to stitch this together in my head, forget it. I always think about the tax that you'd actually do a yarn diagram with the lines on a big board. But that's what we're doing from a compute and scale perspective with our products. Anytime there's relationships with anything, we're tracking it. And then if something starts to happen, lateral movement, pivoting, anything that happens in the environment, we're going to see it. So, native tools just don't do it, right? A lot of times you'll try to do it with open source products, a lot of open source type tech, and it's just not going to happen. You can, it takes a lot of effort. And then what you're also going to find is that they're just too noisy for the SOC. SOC's going to put the blinders on. They're going to kind of shift away from things. Even if MSSP has somebody that's actually on that board or watching the glass all the time, they're going to end up closing their eyes on it. They're going to miss something, especially if something's too noisy. And the idea is to take all the telemetry that we can, take those low fidelity signals, and then push it, make it high fidelity so that you guys actually see what's going on. All those little tiny indicators make something big. And we talked about that. Then the idea is to kind of cover the whole attack surface. Make sure you cover every bit of it, right? So anything from cloud to network to on-prem, working from home. I mean, everybody works from home now. Who doesn't? It's probably some. Some people have to go back to work, I guess. But and then really empowering the security teams out of this with Team Axon, research people that we have that are nation state. Most of them are coming out of Unit 8200 and such. We have other people that work in the research team, but they focus on this every day and day in and out. And obviously to minimize security risk. Who doesn't want to minimize security risk, right? So what we ended up doing today is we showed how integration security controls actually has to happen. There's no way you can get around it. It has to be better. Your visibility, your detection and response absolutely has to be key to everything you're doing today. And then successful security strategy, I'm not quite sure what that is. How do we actually look at what is successful in security? Maybe that we didn't get breached. That's good enough for me, right? And obviously, longer data retention is a real big one. And then not getting into cold storage. Staying hot as long as you can. Get a longer data retention so you can look at retrospection inside your security data and go from there. If you guys want to check out more, you can actually see a demo of the system over at our booth. We're in booth 13 over to the left. Got a whole bunch of free stuff over there still. We've got to get rid of a whole bunch of t-shirts. Probably too many sizes to communicate right now. But got hats, pens, all kinds of fun things. But stop over the booth, take a look. It's a fun product. Definitely something that tells you what's going on in your environment. From an analyst perspective, it's absolutely something I wish I had probably 6-7 years ago. It's amazing to see where it's come, the industry and such. But check it out, go to Hunters. Thank you.